Why was Will Smith not arrested for assault? I'm sure Chris Rock would not have pressed charges, but with it happening live on TV and has been recorded, you would think the authorities had sufficient evidence and would go forward with charges, as there should be no place for violence in our society. The majority of minor violence between individuals never gets charged. Will Smith's case is the majority, not the exception, particularly if the victim isn't adamant about making a fuss. Courts have enough to do as it is. A heat-of-the-moment slap, be it at the Oscars or at a bar or in a schoolyard, is unlikely to make it to the courts unless the victim really wants it to be pursued and is going to make it more of a bother to ignore. I was having the same thought, and especially where the court system in LAPT is heavily criticized anyway, it would just seem frivolous and get people more focused on the day, which they don't want. Would also draw accusations of racism to BH, which wouldn't be off base because white celebs consistently get away with bad behavior just like Will's. Also, haven't seen anyone make this very pedantic point, but it's battery, not assault. This definitely seems like the most well-thought-out answer here. What benefit would come from arresting him? Probably none. There are plenty of costs outweighing any potential benefits. Also, I love that you pointed out the assault vs. battery point. Maybe a pedantic correction here, but the reason the majority of minor violence goes uncharged is not because the courts have too much else to do or that cops and prosecutors don't care. It's that in most cases, nobody calls the police for minor violence. If the cops are called for an incident, they will end up citing someone for contact like this, at least in my jurisdiction. In my state, it would be harassment, not assault. I would argue that big reason the courts are so bogged down in many places is exactly because they charge so many incidents of minor violence when the police are called, not the other way around. It is true that these cases typically hinge a little more on how mad the victim is and how much they bother the cops at the scene about it in the day's office later on. The cynical side of me wants to argue that the reason Will Smith was never charged is that the very public and likely negative reaction to charging him with a crime over this would expose how deeply fucked our criminal legal system is. As it stands, if Will Smith was poor, the odds he would be charged with a crime for this would be astronomically higher. Mild violence isn't something that's often prosecuted. One adult slapping another adult one time isn't something the police have time to deal with, especially in a city like Loud. If Chris Rock had decided to press charges, it would be a different story. But since he didn't care, it's written off as basically an argument between two people. Rich people don't press charges on other rich people. It's bad for business. Laws are for the poor, just fines for the rich. Fines that they can easily pay. Yeah, a whole lot of things are legal if you have money to pay fines. People don't press charges on other people. That's a TV thing, not a legal thing. The decision to prosecute Will Smith is with the day of whatever jurisdiction it happened in. Chris Rock absolutely can be compelled to testify in a criminal case even if he doesn't want to. Chris Rock could sue Will Smith in civil court. Most of the time when people are wronged, nobody knows about it. They go to the police and file a report of what happened, and the police will ask something along the lines of, "Do you want to press charges?" And that just means if you say yes, we will pass this along and the day might decide to run with it, and you will end up having to be involved if they do. Deciding whether to press charges for theft, assault, or any other crime falls to the prosecutor, the lawyer for the government, not the victim. Victims play an important role in the charging process by calling the police, filing police reports, and cooperating, or not, with the criminal investigation. But reporting the crime or filing a police report is not the same as pressing charges. It's good for business. That awards show was getting stale and stupid. That slap doesn't do much to Chris, but make him more money, really. Exactly. He was doing a tour soon after. Can you imagine how quickly his shows booked out Law? His shows sold out to the point of tickets being scalped for fairly insane prices after it happened, because people wanted to hear his response. He didn't really say much about it at his shows until the Netflix special he did recently. The response he had to it was pretty good. Where I live, one open-handed slip is a fine of $100. Just once like getting a traffic ticket, just go pay. So if someone really ticked you off, you could straight up slap them and just go pay your $100 and not worry about jail? If we had that rule here, I'd be lining up some $100 bills. Is be more worried about the consequences after 2BH. A comedian's viewpoint. That sucked. But holy shit, am I going to clean up when I tell this story and roast the ever-living taint out of this fool? This is the correct answer. Rock is going to profit off this, so why alienate people? While charges would be up to the prosecutor, he has made it clear he's not interested in cooperating. Rock is a smart businessman. Will Smith, Please stop talking about the thing I did to you in public. It's hard for me. I think a better question is, why was he not ejected? If you or I were invited to that event and we attacked somebody on stage or off, we would have been immediately shown the door. Hollywood royalty apparently gets away with anything, even when it's clear that it happened. That's what is so fucked up about the whole situation. Security should have escorted that cornball piece of shit the fuck out of there. Unfortunately, Will and Jada both think they are above the consequences of their actions. After rewatching some clips of that night from a different angle, Jada seemed extremely amused and elated, cocking her head back in laughter at what her husband had done. She wasn't weeping like the helpless victim she tried to pretend to be. The hard truth is that the Smith household soured what could have been a relaxed, funny, and entertaining show for the rest of the nominees and winners the rest of that night. Their drama queen asses should have stayed home. Yep, had to make it all about them and what a victim she is, as opposed to leaning into it and being part of the joke. It's gotta be hard for a woman to be bald. His reaction did nothing to help or normalize it for other people with the same issue. Based on that incident, they both seem to be terrible people. Chris Rock and all American residents, citizens, cannot press charges. He could file a complaint, which might make the lap respond. But you're talking about one of law's most prominent citizens who felt he was defending his wife's honor. Is it really worth the lap's efforts to investigate arrest him? The law dies time to go through the charges of case when no real significant injury occurred? This isn't domestic violence where you know there's violence that isn't being seen, so you're trying to protect the victim from future harm. This is a one-time minor incident. Frankly, the cost from his defense lawyer's efforts would be prohibitively high that the day would see zero benefit in pursuing, not to mention the widespread public mockery condemnation for overreaction towards the actions of a black man. Will Smith, as it is the aggressor here. Everyone knows he was wrong. If he's charged, it would be very easy to spin it as an overzealous dad's office against black people when they're already trying to combat that image. In that case, he could easily be seen as the victim, with Chris Rock probably even defending him against the charges. More stories on the channel. RedStore.